Happy Monday, and welcome to Power Talk. Y'all just don't know how happy I am to be able to communicate with you guys live today, because I only got electricity and internet back at about 7:30 last night. So I was kind of running by the seat of my pants to know whether or not we would actually be able to do a show today. And we are, and I feel very blessed. My guest today is Nicole Myers Henderson. Nicole is one of the most amazing women I've ever met. She is multi-talented. She is an author. She is a medical intuitive, and she also is a remote viewer, which is a talent that I think many of us could develop. We're going to learn more about that from her, but mostly we just don't know about it. So welcome, Nicole.
Hi, Jean. Thank you for having me on the show again. It's so nice to be here.
I'm just really excited to see your face.
Thank you.
It's wonderful. So, Nicole, tell everybody how, first off, that they can get in touch with you, your website, your contact information.
Sure. They can reach me by calling 704-791-7638. And my website is intuitiveedge.today. INTUITIVEEDGE.TODAY. Intuitiveedge.today.
Yeah, well, I'll have you repeat that again at the end of the show. Because I think those of you who are watching and listening today are probably going to be very excited about what Nicole does. And you might really want to take advantage of her services. Nicole and I chatted a little bit briefly before we went on the air. And what we would like to do is start the show today by saying a little prayer for all of the people who have been impacted by Hurricane Michael. You know, I consider myself to be so blessed because I really didn't have any physical damage to my home, my property, or my family. I was just without electricity for almost 5 days. And that is like no big deal when you consider how many people have lost lives, have lost homes, have lost their livelihood, their businesses, their animals. I mean, it's horrific, what has happened here in the panhandle of the state of Florida. So, Nicole, you want to do the prayer or you want me to do it?
Go for it. Okay. I'll hold the space.
All right. So everybody just take a moment, take a deep breath in, center yourself in your heart. And dear God, we thank you so much for your faithfulness, for your loving kindness, for all that you do for all of us. And we lift up to you all of those who were in the path of Hurricane Michael, who have lost things that were dear to them, people, things, places, businesses. Entire cities have been washed away and blown away. And we thank you for surrounding all of those who have been impacted by this storm with your loving kindness. Hold them all in your loving arms. And we lift them all up to you today for your help, for your peace that passes all understanding. And we ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Wow. Yeah, that was, I've got to get back in my body now.
I know, that's why I didn't offer to do it, because I would end up, when I think about all the people that have been influenced adversely by not only Michael, but Florence as well.
Yeah,
I mean, to have two back to back, it's like, wow, how much more can people take? But Mother Nature, there's no discrimination. It's just
no, not at all.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about you. Let's get to the happy stuff. The first thing that I actually learned about you was that you are a very gifted medical intuitive, and that kind of, I think, started for you in an interesting way when you laid your hands on a car once, right?
That's right. Right. I worked within the NASCAR industry, and quite by accident, I leaned against a car and closed my eyes thinking about what I heard the guys talking about when they were working on the car. And I was just wondering, like, the question I held in my mind was, I'd like to see what the issue is. And all of a sudden, this map opened up in my mind's eye, and I could see the inner workings of the car, and it just lit up. The parts that were bad lit up. So all I had to do, I told one of the guys, and they said, well, how do you know? You don't know cars, do you? I said, no, not at all. And it just worked out great. They tried it, and they were able to make the race. So it just went from there.
And then you've just kind of transformed that into working with bodies and letting people's bodies show you.
That's right.
What's going on inside there.
I had always been intuitive. I mean, from my childhood, 4 years old, seeing spirits, and like it looked like mists, without the physical form totally intact, and then moved into this other work in life. So I think our intuitive abilities evolve naturally anyway. It's just whether we want to. Where everyone's intuitive to a certain degree, just whether we want it to accelerate or evolve.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I know I shut mine down when I was very, very young because it frightened me. And I was nonverbal, so I didn't really have any way to explain to anybody what was scaring me. So I just turned it off until I was in my 50s.
That's interesting. Yeah. I'm really glad that I opened myself up to it. But I'm really thankful that I've had so many incredible mentors over the years that never let me turn it off. You know, many that I've met have said, no, you have a gift and you need to use it for the good of humanity. So don't let yourself shut down. And it was difficult learning that empathic side of me to feel what somebody else feels. Quite often walking around during the day, you wake up in the morning, everything's fine. And then as you bump into other people throughout the day, you start feeling yucky. And then, for years, I wondered whether it was me. My mother used to call me a hypochondriac. So it was once I realized that somebody else's energy was not something that I had to hold on to, that I could act as a filter and let the information come through me and then let it go, determine whether I was supposed to do something with it or just release it. Yeah. It made it easier.
For sure that, and I'm an empath as well. And, I have to constantly sort of fight with myself to be conscious and cognizant of that. Last night, in fact, I got hit by this huge wave of depression. And, I managed through not having electricity and all the stuff that I've gone through for the last week. I've managed to stay really stable and on top of it and optimistic. And then it was like, wham, bam, right between the eyes. And all of a sudden I realized, whoa, this is not mine. I've allowed myself to plug into mass consciousness and I need to extricate that, disconnect from it. And as soon as I did that, I was back to Jean, and my usual happy, optimistic self. So I know what you're talking about from that standpoint, but your work goes so much more deep than that. You are able sometimes to give, in fact, probably not sometimes, more often than not, to give doctors information that helps them to support their patients, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So I'll give you an example. My elderly woman that used to live across the street from us, her family lived 4 hours away, so they asked me to care for her, keep an eye on her. And she was ODing on her medication that the doctors were giving her, and her son kept trying to figure out what was wrong. And so I agreed to oversee her care. And I went over one morning to give her her breakfast and her pills, and I could feel this pressure building up in her skull. And I was watching her make her breakfast, and she was making eggs, and she had a lot of butter in the pan, and she was putting a lot of salt in there. And I said, do you realize what you're doing? And she said, yes. And I said, are you sure you want to do that? Yes. And she's just her real snappy attitude. Like I said, you're not feeling well today? No. Would you like me to do anything about it? No. Like it was just all one word stuff. So I called her son on the way out of there, and I said, I think your mom's headed for a stroke, and this one feels like it's going to be a bad one. So be mindful. An hour later, her physical therapist came in and called me within 10 minutes, and she said, she said, can you hear her in the background? And I said, she's having a massive stroke. Go ahead and call EMS. I'll be right there. And so when I walked in, she said, how do you know? So I could tell her sensory abilities, like when one thing shuts down, another thing picks up. So she was having this stroke. She could smell my vanilla cologne, but in her mind, she related it to baking a pie. Like she could smell like an apple pie with vanilla in it. And I would ask her questions and she wasn't answering and everything was all gibberish. So EMS shows up and they start putting her through the paces. And I said, this woman's not going to make it. You need to put her in the squad car and get her to the hospital now. And they just took their time, lollygagging. They didn't leave for an hour. So I called the son. Anyway, let's fast forward to the hospital. I walk in. There's no one in the room with her. It took me an hour to get things situated here. And I walked in and I could see her and I saw one of her eyes was crossed, like it was turned in. And I knew she had a major brain bleed. I could feel it. And she was crying and she couldn't speak to me. And I just put my hands on her and communicated with her using telepathy. And I said, okay, what do you want? Because this one's pretty bad. They're going to push for surgery. What do you want to do? And her answer back, again, through telepathy, not speaking, was just, give me a peaceful way out. Don't try to push anything. Just let my son know that I'm ready to go. And the doctor when I was talking to her, the doctor came in. He's like, what are you doing? And I knew to say, I'm an elder care advocate. Had I said, I'm an intuitive.
Right. Straight jacket.
I'm her elder care advocate. And he said, thank God. I've been trying to get a hold of her son. I don't know what. And I said, I understand she's having a major brain bleed. And he just said, yeah, let's go in another room and talk. What do we do? And I said, she only wants this, the quality of care that you can give her comfort care. That's it. So when doctors, even though the doctor knew what was going on, it was still that to be able to speak for someone who can't speak for themselves. So that's just one instance of being able to use intuition to communicate for somebody who can't open their mouth and verbalize their wants and needs. But also when doctors have run every test known to man and nothing comes up and they go back to the person knows that they're sick, there's something going on, but they can't the doctors can't put their finger on it. They would label it as idiopathic, and then they go into, well, let's figure out what kind of medication we can give you to try to make you better. That seems to be the go-to. Let's find a medication that'll help. Well, in those instances, I can lay my hands on or even use remote viewing at a distance to be able to see through their body, look at their organs and systems, and see if there's something else there. Is there a tumor? Is there cancer? Is it just bacteria? Is it parasites? To be able to whittle it down, and then to be able to use the terminology that the doctors would use to communicate with them and let them know where to look or what to look for. So there aren't a lot of doctors that are open to this. Usually when I'm invited in by the family, and then the doctors get a good hard look at it right there up front and personal to then say, who are you and how did you do that?
Right.
And to be able to speak scientifically, speak like them, to be able to say, all right, this is not a woo-woo psychic thing. This is science documents that we humans are absolutely sensory, from the inner workings of our bone and blood to our exterior etheric body, our energetic body, and being able to break it down for them. Looking at the organelles in the cell and what those organelles are supposed to do for the body, and when they're not performing properly, how that body broke down and allowed illness or dis-ease to manifest.
Well, I mean, you've done this for me, because there was a point about a year ago where I thought I had had a tumor. I was having some discomfort and pain, and I was like, whatever. And I called you up and you go, Jean, your lymphatic system is all clogged up. So I signed up for a series of lymphatic drain massages, and all of that discomfort went away. Now, what's kind of interesting is I'm getting ready to do it again because I'm feeling that discomfort again. So it's my body telling me that, you need to, you don't move enough. You need to get that lymph going and clean yourself out, you know. So,
right. Most people don't pay attention to the lymphatic system or the endocrine system. Those are major filters for the body. When they get clogged up, we start to feel sluggish and yuck. You don't sleep well or something just doesn't feel right. That's an easy go-to to clean yourself out and clean out your lymph nodes.
Exactly.
Lymph massage, whatever, vacutherapy, whatever works for you. Herbs. Yeah.
So this has been an interesting segue into the topic of our show for today, which is remote viewing. Because when you're doing your medical intuitive work, you're actually using this tool called remote viewing. Can you share with the viewers what is that all about?
Sure. So we can start back with, you'd hear of the Native Americans talk about, shape shifting. Are you familiar with that term?
Yes.
Where they would take on the form of an animal and imagine that they're able to walk through an enemy's camp and find out that they're actually going to be attacked the next day. So something as simple as that, they call it shape shifting, but it's really a form of remote viewing. It's to be able to put yourself in another place and another time to see what is going to transpire or what has transpired. Because remote viewing, you can move across timelines. Space and distance in remote viewing really means nothing unless you're holding an intention to be in a certain place at a certain time,
right,
to extract information. So if I wanted to know about your health when you were 10 years old, in my mind, I would use your birth date or just looking at your face and move through time back to when you were 10 and ask your 10-year-old self what you were feeling at that time. Or move 10 or 20 or 30 years into the future to examine you to find out where you are. And this gives us a good indication of what you might want to do right now so that your body can stay in balance from here forward. But, this is life, so it doesn't always, we're not perfect. Life isn't perfect. It just is.
Right. Yeah. And, there is no such thing as time. So,
right.
It's just an illusion. So you're able to do that fairly easily, I think, right?
Right. Yeah, oh, definitely. I used to, I've always just been able to connect with people and things just by mere thought. However, when I learned remote viewing, I learned through Dr. Wayne Carr from the Western Institute of Remote Viewing. And I remember when I first connected with him, he said, okay, I want to test you, use your remote viewing protocol. And I said, well, what is that? It's like, I don't have a protocol. I just I hold that person in my mind and move through their energy field. And he said, okay, I'll send you my data so that you can try it on and see how you do. And he came back after I finished. I sent him the paperwork and he said, okay, I want you to be a part of my worldwide team. That was amazing that you connected that quickly, but I want you to learn the protocol because the protocol actually can take you deeper. And this is something this is a good segue too into the next step of this book that I now have coming out with Dr. Ann Watson. It'll be out this month. It's called Flash, The Science of Intuition. And it's Ann's book. Ann is the author, and I've given information to go with it to share the remote viewing and remote healing aspect. In a study done by the Japanese, there was a game that they'd use called shogi. And they hook sensors up to the human brain, and they let these guys play this game. And during the game, they found out that during the first 8 seconds of thoughts of a move, where you're going to move the piece, it's like a chess game, but it's a bit more complex. So they found that when the guys were going to move their pieces, during those first 8 seconds, if they made their move, they were in intuition, that an area of the brain called the basal ganglia, more specifically the caudate nucleus, would light up. But after that 8-second mark, the lights would go off. So if they made their move after the 8-second mark, they weren't as successful as if they were in intuition. So they realized that the brain, that area of the brain was connected. What I know through my work is that every stitch of us, every part of our body is connected to that same sensory system.
Yeah.
That if we pull in data, if we're streaming, like we're the filter, you were talking about the lymphatic system. Mm-hmm. The way I see my body is that it is a filter. So when I hold someone or something in mind, that information gets streamed from that person through the universe, through me. My body begins to act like their body does. So I get to feel what they're feeling. Like see, hear, smell, taste, feel. Every sensory ability lights up. And through remote viewing, through the use of that protocol, if you move quickly through the protocols, you stay in that intuitive state. Yeah. If you get stuck on something for too long, it's time to drop your pen and walk away. Yeah. Because once you get past that 8-second mark, some of that data is just going to be white noise.
Yeah, you know, and I found that when I'm teaching inner speak to students, and the first thing, of course, I have to teach them is how to muscle test. And I tell them do it fast, do it really, really fast, and trust that first answer that you get, because if you don't, then it's probably not going to be right. And if you get too bogged down in it, you've done what you just said. You've missed that 8-second mark.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, the United States military got real big into remote viewing back during World War II, right?
Correct. Yeah, during the Cold War. So they used it for a number of reasons. But they trained soldiers to to go places anywhere around the world and check in on people, places, and things. And they were really good at finding things, like using longitude and latitude. And anyway, I can't really speak on the military aspect. I'm sure that if you imagine having such a gift or such an ability, I'd be using it for everything. And I do. I more specifically use it for medicine, for health and wellness. Although I like using it for animals. I use it now for training dogs, especially dogs for military guys who have been disabled because of war. So it's usable for every little thing. And yeah, Stanford University and the U.S. military developed the U.S. protocol. Or theirs anyway.
You know, I've experienced this myself. Many years ago, I had a therapist who used hypnotherapy to help me through some emotional trauma that I was going through following a divorce. And she was big into using forensic remote viewing. And so she would hypnotize people and let them go look at stuff. And then she would validate, you know, that the stuff that was seen. And so she did this with me. And the first couple of times that we did it, I thought it was great fun. And then I realized that this was not in integrity, because what she was doing was she was using me to do work that other people were paying her for. Ooh. And she really hadn't asked my permission for that. She was just doing it. So needless to say, she was no longer my therapist once I figured that out. But I got to experience it, because even when you're hypnotized, you know, you're still in control of your faculties. And, you know, I could hear what I was telling her when I was like, talking to these people and asking them what was going on in their body, or in one case, it was a child that was in a coma, you know, and it was quite fascinating to me. And then, like I said, it was fun until I realized, wait a minute, she didn't ask my permission for this, and I'm not getting paid for this, so she is. Yeah. So, yeah, so I know it works. I mean, I know you can do it, but you teach people how to do this, right?
I do. Yeah, I have a certification program. So those that are interested in learning it, whether it's to be certified and use it for work or just for self, for development, mind control, mind development. Yeah, so I really enjoy it.
Tell everybody how to get in touch with you again, because we said it at the beginning of the show, but, you know, some people may have joined us late.
Sure. So the website is www.intuitiveedge.today. It's not a .com. It's TODAY. And my phone number is 704-791-7638.
Cool. And her name is Nicole Myers Henderson. And yeah, because I think that would be a fascinating course to undertake. And I know you're a good teacher, and so I know that would be fun.
Thank you.
And enlightening. So, yeah. And so tell us again what the name of the book and when it's going to be out.
Sure. So it's out this month. It's coming out of a publisher from Canada, Post-Hypnotic Press, and it'll be out. I'll have it with me. I do an event in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, October 24th through November 2nd, and I'll have the books with me. So the name of the book is Flash, The Science of Intuition, with Dr. Ann Watson and with myself.
All right. And tell us, how can they find out about these events where they can see you live?
Sure. Facebook. Just look up my name, Nicole Henderson or Nicole Myers Henderson. I think I've got a couple on there. The first event will be at 1774 Grill and Tap. It's an old pub in Hellertown, Pennsylvania, in Saucon Valley. And then Dr. Nancy Erb, who has worked with me in the past, and I've done a certification program from her place in Clinton, New Jersey. We'll be doing a open door to intuition where I do body scans, and people come in, they pay $25 to come in and see me, and I body scan them and see what's happening in their life and help them with whatever I can.
That sounds fantastic. Well, Nicole, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to be with us today and share yourself and your work with the viewers and with the listeners. And viewers, until next week, remember that people who take responsibility for their lives create the reality they desire. And next week, my guest is going to be the amazing Mae McCarthy. She is a New York Times #1 best-selling author who has a brand new book coming out about gratitude and forgiveness. And her first book about the path to wealth was life-changing for me. So I can only imagine what this next one's going to be. So join me next week with Mae McCarthy. And thanks again, Nicole. Much love.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.